Hey everyone, Anthony DiGiovanni with SacredU Philosophy here again with another video. Today guys, we're talking about how to deal with issues in your life, how to deal with problems. If you're human, if you're living, you're just going about your basic life, I promise you, you're probably dealing with issues, and if not now, you're going to. So let's figure out how best to mythically approach these problems that we face as humans. All right, so as you guys know, along this whole series that I've been doing so far, I've been journeying down the hero's journey and really myth in general. For people that are just now hitting the channel, or you've never heard of the myth, this is the first video of mine you've watched, I need to probably explain to you why I'm using that term myth. It might seem archaic to you. People that have been watching, go ahead and skip a few seconds ahead to when I get into it. But look guys, I just want to reiterate, like, myth does not mean fake. All right, to our modern day culture, it does so often. The term, oh, that's a myth, usually means that that person was lying or it's fake. That's not what it meant to our ancestors. And it's been proven through a few people, but psychologically speaking, myth was the stories that were created out of our ancestors viewing life and looking at life and saying, how can we best pass down to the people below us, the youth beneath us, on how to live the best life. How can we do that? And these were illiterate people. They had to tell stories, and that was the best way they found, was they could tell these metaphoric stories, tell these myths, and it would teach people metaphorically, again, to how to approach life. And out of all the myths in the world, Joseph Campbell did a lot of studying and found that the hero's journey, it's one type of myth told everywhere. He found that the hero's journey was the predominant story told all around the world, and in different cultures, different times. And so what you can do is you can look at it, and he traced it back to the human psyche. That's why it happened. And so I agree with that, and I think that if we can understand this hero's journey, we can understand a bit more how our own brain works and how we're supposed to approach life the hero's way. And that's for everybody. Each one of you watching this, I don't care what gender you are, I don't care what age, whatever you identify as, whatever class, like, you can be the hero in your life. And it starts with you. Okay, so getting back to the main video. I've talked about the initiating phases of the hero's journey. But once the journey begins, once the adventure begins, the hero in the hero's journey always goes through a road of trials. And sometimes that's literally trials, like, hey, someone gives him 10 trials. I think Hercules in his original myth was given 10 trials. So it can be literal, or it can just be issues and problems that we face, or that the hero faces. And the thing with this, this road of trials, is it's necessary. Not only to get to your attained goal, your ideal future. It's never going to come easy, but it's necessary to it's the friction that helps the hero grow into becoming who they want to be. And that's initially why it's so important, I think, going down that route to us as humans and the lives we face all the time, is that we need the friction of risk, the friction of problems, the friction of change, the friction of chaos, to help form us into the people we want to be. And that's your road of trials. Okay, so I always like to give an example of what I'm talking about, just to help hit it home visually. And for those of you who have seen it, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is one of the best ways to show this. The Goblet of Fire, he literally goes through 3 trials of the Triwizard Tournament, and to win that cup and other things. Spoiler alert, but Voldemort, the bad guys involved. And what's funny is, looking at it from that angle, from the mythic angle, Harry has to go through these trials, and these, in the book, they kind of hit home more, like, these are dangerous trials. Like, people die doing these, students will die, and it's very life-threatening in the book, and a little bit in the movies, through the trials. But Harry has to go through those challenges to face the greater evil that's awakening at the end of all that, right? When he grabs the Goblet of Fire at the end of the last trial, he's immediately shipped to go face the big evil, and he's ready. He's as ready as he could be then. And so the trials were necessary. If Harry wasn't involved in the Triwizard Tournament at all, and had somehow found that cup at the end of the movie and had to go face Voldemort, I don't think he would have been ready. I think he would have died. So all the challenge, all the grief, all the strife of the Triwizard Tournament was necessary and needed. And that's a great example of what I'm talking about today with the road of trials. All right, so what does this practically mean for you watching this, Joe Schmo, whoever you are? You're like looking around, you're like, dude, I'm not into myth, and I'm not a hero. Well, I want to stop you there because you are. And what I'm trying to get people to realize is that, or is what I had to realize, which is that these myths, again, they don't mean fake, they don't mean made up. These are stories that our ancestors are telling us on how to act. And here's the thing, we found John Piaget is a psychologist that studied children, and we found that as we learn as children and even into adulthood, we act out and intimidate or imitate before we ever know what we're doing. So we'll act out things, we'll act out knowledge before we know what we're doing, and before we can verbalize it. And then once we've acted it out and lived it, we can turn around and take our self-awareness and say, what does this mean, and verbalize it, and then you put it into practice, and then you put it into story, and you crystallize it there, and then it becomes psychological and philosophy. All right, so you kind of see the pattern there, I hope. What I'm getting at is these myths were our ancient people looking back on themselves and saying, wait a minute, we've been acting out how to live. We've been acting out how to best survive and how to be the most optimal human. How do we verbalize that? And that's what they came up with, was these stories. And when you start to look at it that way, it's amazing the knowledge that they have. We can't just pass these over as story. And I throw the three main monotheistic religions into this category as myth. Again, it's not insult, it's not to throw baggage on it. They're things that we can't just look over. And there's lessons there, there's deep psychological lessons there. What I'm getting at practically, guys, is as humans, we're gonna suffer. That's the one thing that's constant, and one thing you can't argue, is that human life is full of suffering. Now the next question is, what are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna take the nihilist, atheistic route of, well, there's no meaning, therefore it doesn't matter, I'm just gonna turn to dust, and to dust I will return, and whatever. I mean, go ahead, live that route, and I could see why people do that. I've had tiny little battles of that psychologically. Usually our reasoning minds will lead you there if you let reason just completely lead you. And the thing I know about that is, mythologically speaking, again, that is the creed, that is the viewpoint of Satan, the devil, the epitome, whatever you want to call him, the epitome of evil. That's his viewpoint on life. It's lack of meaning, there's no purpose, so do what you want. Milton and Goethe with Faust wrote that, and into their stories about the fall of Satan. And anyway, it's become myth in Christianity, but like that's his ideal. That's how he views life. What I'm getting at, guys, is you can make your life a little less full of suffering, and it starts with you. You can take responsibility, and you can approach it. There's literally two different mechanisms in our brains. We've been able to, not me, but like I've seen studies where they've done this, where they've given two groups of people an initiating, I don't know, just something out of the blue, something chaotic, something unknown. And they had one group unprepared, and they weren't ready for it. And they had another group that was told about it and approached this unfamiliar thing willingly. And the group that approached it willingly were using a different faculty of their brain than the people who weren't aware of it and didn't approach it willingly. They didn't approach it willingly. And they were using the side of their brain that's more about defense, it's more about fleeing, like running away, and anxiety driven. And the side that approached it willingly was using the faculties of the brain that were about approach, about adaptive change. So what I'm getting at, guys, is we have to willingly face the trials that are coming. And if you can adapt to this hero's journey mindset and realize that individually, if you start taking responsibility in your life today, you can start to become the hero that not only you need for your life, but maybe if you're lucky, for the people around you, your family, maybe your community. Once you've worked with your family and tried to make your family as best as it can be, and then maybe someday the world. So we don't know the ends of the human potential when we approach things like that. But that all starts with approaching the road of trials, whatever you're facing, whatever issues you have right now, willingly, like a hero, and know that they're there for a reason, and that God's never going to hand you anything that you can't overcome, and that, and really, this might be in a whole nother video, but you can't look at on this road of trials things as failures. I mean, really, I feel like that's such a cliche to say, but failure is a learning point, it's a teaching point, but it all comes back to perspective. It all comes back to approaching all this like a hero. So that's what I'm trying to get you guys to do, because you're gonna face issues, I can promise you that. I can promise you that. You're gonna face problems, and you probably face them now, and it's fine. You can overcome it. That's what's great. And once you realize that, you have the freedom to try.